If you follow my channel, you may have seen that I've featured one or two vintage Roland synths. Okay, maybe more than a couple, like a dozen or so. Alright, I've got a problem. Now, whilst vintage synth archaeology is always fun, Roland didn't stop making instruments decades ago. They still continue to develop new technology to this very day. To that end, Roland sent me two of their current flagship instruments, the Jupiter X and the Phantom 6. Now, the reason I have these two is that the Jupiter is obviously a high-end synthesizer, but the Phantom is also a very powerful synth as part of the many things it does. Before making this video, I put the question on social media and in various groups and forums about what people wanted to know about these instruments, and the most common replies were: 1. Does Zen-Core sound good? 2. How do the specific models compare to the vintage counterparts? 3. How easy or complex is programming on the Jupiter X and Phantom, and what's the differences between the two in terms of workflow? And 4. Beyond sound, are there any specific standout features or things that are noteworthy? Before I start, I should answer what Zen-Core even is. It's Roland's current digital synthesis system that is used both in their Zenology software, but also in a number of their current hardware instruments, including the Phantom and the Jupiter series. So you can create sounds in software or hardware, and then move sounds between software and or hardware, and it's all compatible. Let's look at the first question. Does Zen-Core sound good? With a few patches I've programmed. Obviously, whether or not you like them is subjective, but here we go. I'll play you many more patches throughout the course of the video, but I think that shows you quickly that you can go from quite pure and simple sounds through to snack-happy speaker troublers and anywhere in between. Okay, the next question is how the specific models compare to Roland's vintage analog counterparts. Now, I don't have the original synths in the studio at the moment, but I do have recordings and video of all of them, so I'm going to try and match some things I've recorded in the past. So that's not a function-to-function microscope-style comparison. I've just tried to match some patches in a musical context, which ultimately is what an end user will do anyway. Okay, next, programming. Now, the way I'm going to do this is by setting up the same kind of patch from scratch on a Juno 6 and then the Juno 106 models on the Jupiter and Phantom. Obviously, the Juno 106 is a different synth to the Juno 6, but the main parameters are exactly the same. Before I start, a couple of things to consider. One, I'm not matching the sounds exactly in this case, I'm just activating the same parameters and broadly setting them to show the workflow. Secondly, the Juno is obviously going to be very quick because each slider has one single function and it can only make one sound at a time. The Jupiter and Phantom knobs and sliders have many functions and they can make multiple sounds at the same time. So this is showing you the payoff between the two rather than that the Jupiter and the Phantom are really slow and that the Juno is way faster and that's the end of the story, because of course it's not. And we're off! Okay, it's pretty simple on an original Juno. It's one knob or slider per function because it can only make one sound at a time. Set up the pulse width modulation. Chorus on. A little bit crackly, it is 40 years old. And there we are. About 17 seconds. And we're off! Okay, we're going to initialize a scene in the menu. Done. We're going to choose the Juno model and activate it. And now it's all knob per function. So there's the pulse width modulation from LFO, set up the filter. Only one envelope is active because the original Juno only has one envelope. Get that set up broadly. Right, there's the chorus. And that would be it, but I want chorus 2, and you have to switch that in the menu. So I'll just jog over to where the settings are. There's chorus 2. I also want to add a bit of swirly noise. And we're done. And we're off. Okay, we choose a single tone, and then we select the Jupiter model, and then we just press a parameter button, and we're in. I select this option and initialize a patch, and we're done. But there is a reverb on the scene as default. I've taken that off. Okay, now we can just use the encoders and the little menus to set everything up. We can also use these knobs over on this side. There's the filter and resonance, also the envelope settings as well, and the oscillator settings if you want. You can see I'm changing the envelope here. You can draw that with your finger or use the encoders. There's loads of ways to do it. We're pretty much there. Just set a bit of envelope mod of the filter, turn the chorus on. And there we go. Okay, last but not least, features. Phantom first. Now, rather than give you a long shopping list of functions and specs because there are loads, I thought instead I'd make a quick piece of music with the Phantom and use subtitles to explain what's happening because that will get straight to the point. before I give a summary, I wanted to include a couple of things I think Roland should do to improve these instruments. Number one, you're always in a scene. Now, scenes are crucial because you need to be able to save tones, part effects settings, master effects settings, signal routing patterns, split and stack information, mix information, etc., etc., etc. So a scene will give you total recall of that, much like a project in a DAW. However, a number of people have said to me, and I agree, that the Jupiter should have a panel-only mode. My suggestion would be that when you hold down, say, 2 buttons, and the Jupiter 8 model button, you get an initialized Jupiter with no effects that's not in a scene, so you can immediately start playing without thinking about scenes or tones. If you want to then save it or assign it to a scene, you can, or you can just switch it off when you're done. I think there are people who would like to be able to work like that. I use my Prophet in panel mode most of the time and don't often save things, for example. 2, the phantom patterns can currently only be in 4/4 or 3/4 with compound equivalents thereof. I think any time signature should be possible, but also I think the individual patterns should have discrete time signatures. So you could have patterns in 5/8, 7/8, 3/4, etc. at the same time for polymetric shenanigans. For live jamming, that would be genius. I can do that with other bits of kit I've already got that don't have the touchscreen interactivity that the Phantom does, so I think Roland should seriously consider that to really beef up the offering there. But the good thing is these updates are all theoretically possible because it's the 2020s and firmware and operating systems can be updated. I hope Roland will bring these in the future. So there we go, a Roland vintage synth nut tries out a couple of their current offerings. Now this is sponsored content, as has been disclosed, but it was really important to both myself and Roland that this video be about answering the specific questions people had asked and not about trying to flog you a Phantom or a Jupiter. I hope I've answered those questions. If you've got any more questions, please stick them in the comments section. Although bear in mind, I don't work for Roland's customer service or their technical support, so if your question is, I've spilt soup on my Phantom, I don't know, lick it. In terms of this video, obviously there was loads of information in it, but there's a whole pile of stuff I've not even talked about, which is on the screen at the moment. I've linked some videos in the description where you can go into all that detail if you want to know more, but I think this video is plenty long enough as it is and kind of gives you the broad strokes of what these instruments are about. Huge thank you to Roland for this opportunity, and thank you for watching.